it seems rather obvious. It seems rather obvious that Gina McCarthy's own private cops, who are called the Office of Homeland Security, which is not the Office of Homeland Security. They are the administrator's private liaison with the other law enforcement officers, such as the FBI. They are her liaison people. They have no authority to do nothing. They first became known to the world when they investigated, quote unquote, John Beal, B-E-A-L, the guy that pretended to be a CIA agent and stayed home a lot and traveled a lot on the taxpayer's dime, receiving retention bonuses. His only claim to fame is that he helped write the Clean Air Act. And having done that, well, basically he can just coast through the rest of his career. Well, he was investigated by the EPA's Office of Homeland Security. Well, they didn't have the authority to do that. They were in the way. They should not have been asked to investigate John Beal. They didn't have any authority to investigate Diddley.
When there is a national security issue that needs, that the FBI has asked EPA to help them with, analyzing information, gathering information, perhaps even interviewing people, that there is a possibility, maybe not in every case, but in possibility, and I want to point out also these are very rare that we do, that person or that activity could also be employee misconduct that is completely in the wheelhouse of the Inspector General. So the question really is, how can we get the FBI and the Office of Inspector General?
Bob Perciasepe is trying to give the impression that there's just this unfortunate conflict between the Inspector General and his Office of Homeland Security. That ain't the case. It is, as I just described, the so-called OHS is only acting on behalf of the administrator in her function of cooperation with the other law enforcement agencies in the event of a national crisis, a terrorist act or something that threatens, say, for example, our drinking water. The OHS was created by the Environmental Protection Agency. They have no law enforcement authority. They should never have pretended to investigate John Beal. They should not be acting in an arrogant fashion when the Inspector General's assistants show up asking questions, conducting some investigation, perhaps investigating one of their own members.
Together so that we can stand down on our side as to what it is we need to do to get those to legitimate and appropriate things to do. Because the people we're talking about we're not trying to hide behind national security. They're working.
So you agree that the FBI needs to be involved?
Absolutely. The FBI.
Would you agree, Ms. Sullivan, that the FBI needs to be involved?
Yes, sir, but there are other issues that do not involve the FBI. Other budget issues involve the Secret Service, U.S. Marshal Service, Capitol Police. So it is really across the broad spectrum of federal law enforcement where OHS is restricting our information, not just with the FBI.
Some kind of way, if we got employees who are watching pornography for 4 hours to 6 hours a day or whatever it was testified to, we got to address that. Mr. Bateman, did you hear me? Did you hear what I said?
Yes, I did.
But that needs to be addressed. And I think the chairman asked you whether that person was still earning a salary, and you said yes.
Yeah, you all have more information than I do on this case. The IG has informed me of this case, but I have no other information on it. I don't know what sites they were looking at. All I know, and so I have no report, I have no information, I have nothing to act
Well,
on other
okay.
than a meeting in my office telling me that they're
Okay.
investigating this person. Now, I'm happy to sit down with them and look at it further. I'm happy to look at what administrative processes we can take. But remember,
Mr. Spee, I'm just trying to send a message back
yes, I hear
to
you.
the agency. We got
I
to
hear
deal
you.
with that. That makes absolutely no sense. And do you both agree that the EPA's Office of Homeland Security has an intelligence support function to perform, including intelligence analysis? Sullivan?
Yes, sir, I do, but in a limited role without having someone with a gun and a badge conducting investigations.
What about you, Mr. Spee?
I agree that they have the authority to do the analysis and the work. I think the key is what can they do with the FBI and how do we work that out. And I don't disagree with Mr. Sullivan that there may be other law enforcement agencies involved with this. But this is the key one. We need to get the FBI and the OIG, and then we will be in the support role we need to be in.
Do you both agree that if the FBI is not leading an investigation into employee misconduct, it is properly the role of the IG and not the role of the EPA Office of Homeland Security to lead that investigation?
I agree 100%.
What about you?
Yes, sir, but again, the devil's in the details. If there's misconduct, we should be told on the front end, not the back end.
Okay.
On Thursday, October 24, 2013, fellow EPA OIG Special Agent Ryan Smith and I had a difficult interview with EPA Office of Homeland Security employee John Martin. With EPA Office of Homeland Security employee John Martin. With EPA Office of Homeland Security employee John Martin. We extended him the courtesy of having his personal attorney present, but he wasn't willing. Wouldn't answer even basic questions. He kept indicating he needed to be home to meet his children, so we ended in a timely fashion in spite of his lack of cooperation with our official investigation. Minutes after he left, I realized he left without the standard warning not to discuss the ongoing investigation with others and without signing the standard non-disclosure form. Agent Smith was escorting Martin's attorney out of the building, and I was unable to reach her by phone, so I asked Special Agent Gary Don Dorman to go with me to the EPA Office of Homeland Security to notify Martin of his obligations. As we progressed into OHS's office suite, someone asked if Agent Dorman and I needed assistance, at which point I also overheard Mr. Martin's voice talking to someone about specific information discussed during our interview of him. Turning in the direction of his voice and looking down the hallway, I saw Mr. Martin standing in the open doorway of an office talking to a woman I later learned was Nancy Dunham from the EPA's Office of General Counsel. With them was someone I later realized was EPA Senior Intelligence Advisor Stephen Williams.
Senior Intelligence Advisor. These are the titles of 2 or 3 individuals involved in a conflict between the EPA and the Inspector General's office, as described by this woman. She goes on to say that they raised their voice and refused to cooperate and pointed their fingers, told her to leave their offices. And keep in mind, they're only extensions of the administrator herself. The administrator has no law enforcement authority. She doesn't even pretend to analyze intelligence. She is simply acting as head of EPA. This so-called OHS is her link to law enforcement in the event of a national emergency. They don't have the ability to investigate. They don't have the authority to thwart an investigation.